What if everything you thought you knew about growing revenue was actually killing it? This week on Rev-n-u Unplugged, I'm joined by Stuart Whyte, CRO at RealVNC, a man who has been building and scaling revenue teams for 12 years across private equity-backed businesses. We're getting into why chasing growth before fixing your foundation is a fatal mistake, how the revenue bow tie keeps customers at the center of everything, and how to kill churn before it kills you. If you're in sales leadership, this one's not optional. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thank you to Indigo, the boutique recruitment consultancy that places elite go-to-market talent for tech companies scaling. Without them, this podcast just wouldn't exist. Okay, let's get to it. This is Rev-n-u Unplugged.
Stuart, welcome to Rev-n-u Unplugged. It's great to have you on the show. I'll let you just do a little brief intro to yourself shortly, but we're going to be talking, we've got three great topics here: building the foundation before chasing growth, the revenue bow tie, and then finally we're going to talk about managing churn proactively. So looking forward to the insight that comes from you on this, Stuart. But as a way of getting started, if you could just give our audience just a brief intro as to who you are.
Yeah, hi, my name's Stuart Whyte. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at RealVNC. I've been with RealVNC coming up 3 years in a couple of months' time. Prior to that, I was Chief Revenue Officer at Mention-me, and before that at Thunderhead. So I've been doing these jobs for about 12 years now. Each tenure's been between 5 and 3 years. This is 3 years, this one I'm in now. So yeah, it's a great job.
Well, look, we'll get into building the foundation before chasing growth, because I think it's a really significant topic to get into.
Yeah. Okay.
Before I go into my deep dive questions on this, I'd like the audience to get an understanding of where your thinking comes from. And you've actually created a playbook. There's about 12 slides, I think it is, that you present to boards before you take on an opportunity. Can you just describe, without going into too much detail, what's on those slides and what made you feel like you needed to create it? I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The interview process and the process of getting to know the board before starting in a role with a private equity-backed business is to set the expectations that it does take a period of time to make the changes and make the changes in the right order. So what I always ask for an opportunity with the chair and the board to present how I would approach it and make sure that is aligned to what they think is right for the business that they obviously already know. I would have had, prior to going into an asset, I would have already had lots of information from the board and from the CEO, but it's always really important to make sure that a CRO is aligned to not just the SLT of the business, but the board and the investment committee that own the company. And the sort of things I talk about, it's you can't sell yourself out of trouble. Bottom line, ultimately you have to look at the foundations of the business to make sure they are, one, selling to the right ICP, that they are fueled with the right sales playbook, they go after the high value use cases, which is linked to the ICP, and look at the foundations of the actual customer base they've got already. Why did the customers buy from that organization? And ensure that those customers are getting the most value and communicate with those customers. It goes further down the line later on where you maybe quarter 2 or 3, you might consider looking at pricing, because pricing is a great way, one, to firm up the value, but also to create conversations. And if you're not having conversations with your customers, you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they're doing, and you probably find they're doing something very different from what they were doing when they first bought the software to what they're doing 18 months later. So I was very lucky with RealVNC because we have a lot of customers. And that's why it was my alignment with the board was super important to make sure that the customers that we do have or did have, they were all using the software in a way that we're getting value from it, from their business, and therefore we would get value back from them.
I like to particularly play on the word foundation. Your previous life, right? If anybody wants to know how to build a chalet, will know to come and talk to you. You've grown businesses of all sizes. When you're talking about foundation though, and it's at private equity, foundations are normally the early stage, so I can understand that sort of like seed, Series A. But what do you mean by building foundation? If you go in at a late stage of private equity backed business, where the foundation should already be in place. So what are we looking for? What are we trying to understand to really ascertain if the foundations have been put in properly?
Well, taking a step back from that, what I often look for when in new opportunities, I look for a business that has not had a CRO before. And so even if it's private equity owned, what tends to have happened leading up to that sale is that founders have run the business for a number of years, can be 10 years. And those founders aren't necessarily revenue-led individuals. Often they tend to be a technical slant or a product slant. So ultimately, it's almost like rebuilding the foundations. So it can be anything from, as I said, going into the existing client base, looking at the ICP, looking at how they're monitoring their forecast and how the forecast plugs together and how reliable the forecast is. So, I mean, what happens is that any person will get to their limit, of knowledge. And with RealVNC, what happened was it was very technically led business. And so for a long, long time, they built the revenue side of the business on a very technical base. So it wasn't flexible enough for people dealing with customers to put the customer at the heart of the organization. So I agree with you. It's not like brand new and you think the foundation should be built. Often you have to tweak them. Often you have to, put an extension on or knock something down and start again. And sometimes that is a quicker way of accelerating growth than trying to build on what you've got before. And as you said, I have got a background as well in building property, and sometimes it's worth knocking the house down, start again. That's an extreme case, and that wasn't the case in any of the businesses I've been in. RealVNC, we had to build the revenue operations model as well. You didn't have RevOps. So you have to be able to monitor and give the people who are talking to the customers all the information at their fingertips to make the decisions quickly to bring value to the customer.
So you've mentioned a few times the customer being at the heart of what you do. I had Mark Roberge on this most recently. He says you haven't got a true ICP until you've got repeat customers who are you maximising your platform and everything that you do. How often do you think businesses hold on to, because in the beginning at seed it's new logo, it's new logo, it's new logo. How often do you see that companies just hold on to that for just too long when they need to be switching to putting the customers that they have at the centre of everything they do?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it twice where it goes on too long. So within the business I'm in now, we are really, really good in high security environments. Ultimately, there are a number of ICPs and a number of verticals that are highly reliant on their systems that run their high security environments. But bottom line is, we went after those environments, not only just the ones we had already, but also in all of our messaging from a marketing point of view, how we signed up our partners, the partners that specialize in manufacturing and high security and government across all the different regions. And we made sure that that's where we focus, because ultimately, if you're selling into, it's all linked to the other parts of the revenue bow tie, which is if you're selling to anybody, you are literally selling next year's or 2 years' times churn, and that is a big nightmare for a chief revenue officer, and that's probably where most of them, when it does go wrong, that's where it goes really wrong, is when the churn starts to hit. Conversely, I've seen it where they're too strict on ICP and only sell to certain customers, and then your TAM is so small that you can't grow. So you've got to be realistic on what you go after and work with your data teams and your finance teams to make sure you have, as a revenue leader, you're going after a vertical or an ICP that does have a big enough TAM for you to grow into.
Going back to your playbook that you had that you showed to the board, if any sales leaders are listening to this, they're running through an interview process at the moment. From the success that you've had in your past and your reason for putting that slides together, are there a couple of key points that are critical that the sales leaders should prioritize about looking at and understanding at this stage?
It's very difficult. Every business is at a different stage, and every business has got different wins. But the first place I always go is to the customer base and understand through the customers why they bought, why they're buying, and what they're doing with the software. Once you understand that, you can relay that to everything you do with the customer-facing teams, whether it's account management, growing the accounts, whether it's the CSMs or whether it's the sales new business team. They're all interlinked. So ultimately, what value that customer A is getting will be the value that the new business salesperson sells to prospect B. So that's probably the most important thing, is why do they buy? I mean, it's quite old-fashioned. Why do people buy? RealVNC, they buy us. It's very simple because we're the highest secure remote access solution in the market. And if you are a business where you have to have 100% uptime, you have to be super secure from a cyber security point of view, you are not going to use a remote access solution that does not have that security. So that's one of the biggest foundations. Then mapping your go-to-market to those verticals. I'll talk about verticals here because that's what we go after in this business. Making sure you've got a number of channels to market, not just one channel. If you have one channel, it's very high risk. So you've got to be able to, yes, have a marketing machine, have a partner system, have an outbound motion. You've got to be able to tick all the boxes to reduce your risk across the board for revenue growth, because revenue growth doesn't just come from selling to net new enterprise customers.
Makes sense. What benefit does the board get from seeing this slideshow, this information that you are providing them before taking on an opportunity?
I think it gives them comfort that I've come in thinking about it before I even started. I think they get comfortable in the fact it is going to take a little bit of time. I think a lot of the time when CROs start, or any senior person starts in a revenue role, it doesn't have to be a CRO, it's a little bit of a new shiny toy or a magic wand that's, you've got to understand what's going on in the business before you can start making the changes. Really, it's almost the other way around. I do it because I want the board to really understand that it just takes time to fix all the problems that have been building up over a period of time. Because bottom line, private equity boards spend 3 or 4 hours maximum a month working in the business. They don't know the business because they don't work in it 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week or whatever it may be. I think it's more of it's a comfort thing, and it gives them a bit of patience that it will come. And then what they will also want to see is green shoots. So they'll want to see the tide turning. So you have to align and agree those green shoots with them. You have to do that quite early doors in the first 3 or 4 months, and make sure that the green shoots are aligned across the SLT and aligned with the board to make sure you're going in the right direction.
And I guess part of this is also to make sure that you're given enough time to do what you need to do. Had James Began on the show, and he mentioned that one of the greatest questions he ever got asked by a CRO was, when does it become all my fault? When you're putting this plan and letting the board basically say, look, I'm not going to move the dial for X amount of time based on these factors, do you get pushback on that when they go, nah, come on, Stuart?
You always get pushback. But that's part of your job. You've got to build a relationship with the board, and that tends to be an independent chair who technically works for the business and a partner within the PE firm and some advisors. So they always push back. They wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't push back. But as long as you give good, firm reasons with data backing it up, they will give you the time. And as long as you start seeing the incremental growth coming, and you're honest and open, because obviously in the first 3 months, you find out a lot more than you did in a 2-month interview process. So call it early. Don't hide it, and call it. And tell them what the problems are, and tell them how you think you can fix them. And more importantly for them, how much it's going to cost. Because often, some of the changes you bring in, there could be people changes, system changes. That's all part of the foundations. Often in founder-led businesses, you've got employee number 5, 6, and 7 who's worked up from a sales rep right through and is now an SVP of sales, but has never learned how to be one because they've been in the same business for 8 years. It's really common. So that all takes time and money to change and bring those people on, and picking the right people to come in is really, really key, and building that revenue leadership team to make sure you've got all the parts of the revenue bow tie covered is vital. And often there's people in the business that can already do it, they just need nurturing through it. But often they are not in the business, and you have to make those hard decisions to make the changes, and they will let you make the changes if they're confident in you as a CRO. So it's a lot of spinning plates. In that first 3 to 6 months, you have to think about all those different things.
And if you are presenting this and the board are not with it and they're saying it can be done quicker, at that point, do you believe in what you've done and go, well, I'm out, I can't do this? Because I feel that there will be some sales leaders that will go with it and go, okay, it's a great product. I can see that we can make this work. And they come in and then actually they realise that there is no magic wand at all. And things very rarely switch overnight.
Yeah. I mean, I have had those questions, we like what you're doing, Stuart, but we need you to go faster. And often a CRO is brought in because something has been going wrong, sadly. And that is the nature of the business. It's very rare a business will remove a high-performing CRO and bring another one in. Why would they bother? It's an expensive thing to do. Yes, and so if that gets pushed back and says we need you to go faster, I would ask for the time to work out how I could potentially go faster and present that back in a constructive manner a month later, rather than trying to wing it in the actual board meeting.
Makes sense. Once you've been in there and you understand what needs to happen in rebuilding or creating this foundation, what are the leading indicators that you're looking for to know when you're ready to push the button on growth?
There's a number of leading indicators. In the existing client base, what I do is I look at the addressable market. I've got to a point, I've got my verticals, I've got my ICPs and I've got my use cases. And I basically break them up into those different verticals. And I start measuring the growth per vertical and see which ones are performing better. So that's one of the very, very early indicators. Pipeline is always king. Building pipeline in these key verticals is really, really important to make sure that they're going through the sales cycle properly. Conversion rates are also king all the way through the funnel. You've got to be able to get your conversion rates with your expansion business super high. And with your new business, it's got to be north of 30%. Because if you're not doing that, you're not going to grow. So enablement, making sure that the sales team are highly trained, highly disciplined, and understand that they have to perform. We as a business are putting a lot into it, both time, money, and energy. They have to give that back in return. It takes time to get that revenue team bedded in, because ultimately a high performing revenue team you have to have people in the job for a certain period of time. You've got to have them in tenure for more than many months, up to a year plus, before they really understand the nuances of a business, how to sell, how to even use internal systems, be confident enough to ask questions all the time and learn and repeat. So there's, that's a long-winded answer probably. Ultimately, it's the basics. Are you moving the dial? Are you building pipeline? Good example, batterying is our biggest vertical. How much pipeline are you building this January compared to last January? How much you close? What's your conversion rate from this January to last January? Which you might even do in 6-month slots. But it does make sense to compare month to month because you get seasonality in there.
Appreciate your thoughts on that. We're going to move on to the revenue bow tie now, which I love how you described that. But so just to give our audience an idea, when you're talking about the revenue bow tie, what do you mean?
I mean, it's the full circle of the customer. It's the full life cycle of a customer. Ultimately, as a CRO, you are thinking about not just bringing in new customers into your organization. You're thinking how you're going to service those customers, how many touch points are those customers going to have, depending on how they use the product and how big they are from a revenue point of view, or how big they are as a business, to how you're going to prevent them from walking out the door, to how you're going to expand their footprint both geographically and more product, and how you're going to use that information to feed that into the sales team to find more customers of the same type to plug into the revenue bow ties. The revenue bow tie is a cyclical thing. Well, it's a figure of 8. Basically, it keeps the customer in the middle, and it makes sure that everyone around that, it's a bit like the game of rugby. Everyone's supporting the ball. The ball is the customer. So ultimately, we are there to look after the customer from the minute they come into our world as a prospect, all the way through to a 15-year-old customer that's been using the software for that period of time. They should all get treated with the highest most respect, and that also floods into other parts of the business. You've got to basically be that spearhead in the organisation to make sure support understand that, if a support ticket's come in for a customer that gets flagged, and they understand that they tell the revenue team. If there's legal situation going on with a contract or whatever, you've got to make sure we all have a high level of service agreement between the customer and the business of RealVNC or whoever you're working for.
So you've mentioned a few times in our conversation that you personally take accountability for customers, from what you mentioned there, from the pipeline all the way through to the customer. You don't mention the word revenue, you mention the word customer. It's a slight different. Why do you take that on, that you're responsible for customer? Why do you mention the customer rather than the revenue stream? Because I think it's a small but massive difference.
Because one flows to the other, is the main reason. I think it comes from my background of the days of Thunderhead, when it was all about putting a customer first, and the software, that's what the software did. It was a customer data platform and journey orchestration. That's all about customers interacting with their customers at the right time in the right place. And I always thought that was a brilliant thing to sell to an enterprise. If you're looking after your customers all the time, every step of the way, there will be lots of moments of delight, I call it, with a customer. And when someone's happy and enjoying the experience, yes, you have to have a good product. Of course you do. But which we do have a great product. But ultimately, if everyone's giving that customer a great experience, they will be more likely to buy from you than your competition. And if the customer is engaged and wants to communicate, and I'm not just talking when it's after 5 years as a customer, I'm talking in the sales cycle. I'm a great believer in doing things efficiently. When they ask you something, you give it to them. Don't play games with them. Just be honest. If they say they can't do it, fine, you can't do it for a month. These days, customers buy. They don't get sold to. They've had enough of AI selling to them and blanket calls from SDRs. They've had enough of it, and they want to deal with grown-ups, and they want to deal with people that know what they're talking about and are willing to help them. And that's why I always put a customer first. So when I often introduce myself at events or whatever, I always say I'm accountable for all the customers at RealVNC. I am accountable for the revenue and the growth, and that's great, and that's really important. Targeted on revenue. I'm not targeted on the number of customers I bring in through the front door or the number of customers I keep. I'm targeted on growing the ARR of this business and every other business I've been with as well.
So with that revenue bow tie, how do you, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit more when we talk about churn, but part of having that customer journey, there's two parts I'd like to understand to you. Firstly, how do you keep your salespeople aligned to bringing on the right customers? And how do you manage the onboarding when sales hand it over to a customer success? I'd like to understand how you tie those bits together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an ethos you have to build into the business, and you have to build it into your revenue leadership team, and that is your sales managers, your retention manager or head of retention, or your VP of sales, even your marketing head of marketing, and as I said before, other departments. Yeah, from a point of view of handing over, we have a very, where I am right now, we have a very long, broad spectrum of customers. But any customers in the higher tiers, they get involved with, we have a pre-sales technical team. We've got a pre-sales technical team that get involved at the testing. We have a lot of testing that goes on, and they will then hand over to the CSMs. Even the CSMs will get involved before we even close the deal. So we get involved and start talking to them how we're going to work with them, the cadence we would work with them, how many times a year, the sort of some documentation on for their environments, if certain technical requirements they may need. So it's just talking about making sure people understand we have to look after customers. And then once you start doing it and anyone joins the company, you realize that that's what this company is about. So we have channels within the business that have cross-functional people within the organization. And just because you're a new business salesperson, but you've seen an inbound, they've come through a route with a customer complaint, they won't be quiet about it. They'll route it through to the right person. Not that happens very often, but it's important that everyone's there to sort of work as a team. I just talk about it so much in every single revenue team meeting that we have to be supportive. That and we're all in it together. I'm not a magic wand. A salesperson's not a magic wand. We all have to work together to get there.
We spoke about it before. Any VP of sales that's looking to move into a CRO position,
yeah,
it's one of the hardest bits to get your head round. What advice would you give to someone who's particularly coming from that revenue new logo environment and now wants to step into that CRO role? where they've got to look at that full bow tie. What advice would you give them into how because they're not going to bridge it overnight, what steps do they need to come in how should they start thinking about things in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, they should worry about sales the least, because if they've been a VP of sales for 10 years or 5 years and they've got vast experience in building those new business sales motions, whether it be inbound or outbound, why worry so much about it? You should be able to do that naturally, and that's only part of your job, because as a CRO, you're accountable for, say your business is your 10 million ARR, you are accountable for renewing that 10 million ARR, right? And a lot of people don't understand that, which is quite amazing, because ultimately you're closing business every single day just to keep those customers renewing. And you really need to understand the nuances within that customer base on why they're renewing, what are they doing with the software. You don't need to get into too much detail. It goes back to having a good revenue leadership team as a CRO. Your head of retention is one of your most important people, because ultimately they're sat there on a book of business. They're targeted on renewing a certain GRR and creating a certain NRR, and understanding what you need to do with your client base to move those levers. And it's very different to being a sales leader. You're used to, as a sales leader, working on generating pipeline, improving conversion rates, like sales playbooks, enablement and training, forecasting, all of those things. You still have to forecast for a retention team. You still have to forecast, and it's a lot bigger book of business. If you're a 10 million ARR business, likelihood they're going to want 3 million out of you in growth in a year. Well, 3 is a lot smaller number than 10, isn't it? So you've got to worry about the 10. So that's where you have to lean in, and that's the bit you're going to have to learn very quickly, and how that, as a revenue team across the board, you're way more touch points with the rest of your own business. So, you touch finance a lot, you touch legal a lot, you touch support a lot, you product. As a sales leader, the great sales leaders do interact highly with product management, but you'll spend a lot more time doing that. And you've got to get out of the weeds and not get drawn in too much. So you've got to trust your people around you that they're doing the right job, and they respect you as the CRO, that you're keeping that pressure from above off them to do their job properly. Because when people get too pressured, they make bad decisions, really bad decisions, and it's not good if someone's making a bad decision on a very large book of business. So if you're good, the highest level answer to that question, if you're a good VP of sales, you shouldn't need to worry too much about the sales side of it, because it will come naturally to you. Get out of your comfort zone and go and get involved with the CSMs and the retention team. And it can be doubly more complicated when a lot of your renewals are done through the partnership channel, which means you've got to get involved with the partners as well, and align it all together.
One of the things that you mentioned that I really liked is that you open your forecasting platform to everyone.
Yeah.
So they can see exactly where deals are without coming onto the sales floor. How important is this transparency like this in building cross-functional trust?
We put in a really good forecasting platform 18 months ago or so. It's one of the things you have, 2 years now, actually. The old days of people walking around the sales floor asking the sales guy, have they closed the deal yet? And they're not even in the sales team. It's like, maybe it's someone else in the business. They are gone, because that doesn't really help the salesperson. The salesperson doesn't go into the finance department. I'm not saying it's finance that would do it, but go into finance and how's the end of month accounts coming along? Have you done them yet? You wouldn't have a salesperson do that. So the great thing about modern day forecasting is you can give anyone access. So yeah, you can limit the access, and that's fine. But I have a RealVNC CRO forecast, which shows every single part of the bow tie, and all of SLT can be on it, all of the sales team can be on it, but anyone can go on it if they want to and just view it. They can't change it, because ultimately I'm accountable for delivering that forecast and committing to that forecast. And I think it just takes the pressure off. It's just an open environment. It's not sales. Growing a business isn't necessarily a black art. It's just good management of the customers and making sure that they're all looked after. And it's never perfect, and it's harder and harder the more customers you've got. but you've got to do it that way. So I just think that's important. That the old days of everyone asking, knowing about a big deal and asking the salesperson over and over again doesn't help the salesperson. Puts them under too much pressure. And actually, I put them under pressure anyway, because I'm the CRO. I'm the one that's allowed to do that, as is the VP of sales. So they don't need any more people managing them.
So how does that, I guess, make the boat go faster? What value do the rest of the business get by being able to go on there and see exactly where deals are at? And why do you insist on it?
Well, we have a management forecast every week, and that has more than just sales management in it, and it's I report that back to SLT as well. So it could be as simple as it's the beginning of the year. We've got 5 headcount for salespeople. We're 2 months behind hiring. We're 2 months behind hiring because of X, Y, Z. And someone will go, I can help with that. I can speed that up. And so it's making people understand that forecast is how a business is run. So if a CFO and a CEO know that the forecast is accurate and the forecast, they know the ARR that's coming in each quarter, they can, as an SLT and then themselves, can make financial investments further down the line to increase the growth for the business. So a CRO needs to understand they're not asking because they're being nosy. They're asking because a SaaS business relies on that forecast to make sure the decisions are made. And if you articulate what's going on with that forecast outside of just, the sales team and maybe your CEO, people will understand. The chief product officer will know exactly what's going on, and then they'll lean in and they'll start getting involved in some of the deals or some of the renewals because it's a product requirement, and they'll lean in and go, I'll get on the phone, I'll get on the call. That happens all the time with our product team, and it's brilliant. And that really helps retain and expand and get new business. So it's just more, I've made the mistakes in the past of trying to close the forecast down and stop people seeing it, but actually it's detrimental. And I've learned that the hard way. And maybe I'm a bit older and grey now, and I'm not so precious over it, but it is something the business all need to understand, that the forecasting is there for a very good reason. It supports the rest of the business.
Everything you say there makes perfect sense. I've heard a lot of really great CROs and VP of sales say, look, my job is to help remove blockers that are stopping deals from being done, be it renewals or new logos. And I think broadening that out to the rest of the business where they can actually log in from anywhere and see what's going on without you being in a room together, which probably only happens once or twice a month, so you can get on top of things quickly. How do you then actively educate these other leaders that this is open? You not only need to look at it, but you need to understand where your role is within it.
That's what you use your SLT meetings for. We have an SLT once a week, and that's all the C-level people in the business. That's not board level, but it's SLT level. So the CEO hosts a meeting once a week, and everyone has a section for their own department. I use my section to talk about my forecast and talk about how it, and bring up any things I'm going to ask for and any help, and do it in a collaborative way. 95% of the time it goes down really, really well. And it's my I own the company number, but we all do really. It's just I'm spearheading that company number, and it's vital that everyone knows that, not just the CFO and the CEO, because the CFO and CEO are always going to know a lot more than the others about the forecast. And it's making sure you've got a good relationship. And it's the hardest times is when it's going badly. It's really easy when it's going well. It's very easy to get, we're all on target. It's all going well. It's brilliant.
And I guess how you run it, when you have those conversations, the other C-levels, they're not surprised, are they? Because they've looked at it, they understand what's going on. So it's not like it's something new. And they might even come to those meetings and say, look, I knew you were going to ask me that. Here's what I think. So you kind of ahead of the game a lot?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we do you have a high volume of business every single month, and we have to tranche it into different sizes of opportunities. So people are very focused on the larger opportunities, a certain amount and above. It's more manageable, there's less of them every month, it's easier whereas the longer tail deals, we more model it. And if we see any spikes in problems in the data, that's when, they're not looking at that, I'm looking at that. And the finance team are looking at that. And if we see a blip somewhere, we know there's a problem. I don't know what it may be. It could be anything. We'd be like, we'll drill down and see what the problem is. But yeah, it's all about the communication between you and the rest of that SLT and their own, like the product leadership as well. Make sure that they know what's going on. Because you hear often the fatal thing is when a product leader, and this does not happen where I am, but you go on, you take them to a customer call, and they know the deal's worth £100,000, and they'll come off the call like, that's way too cheap. Our product's way more valuable than that. Well, it is, maybe, but ultimately you can only get the maximum you can get from a business. They know what value they're getting from the software, so you shouldn't push it.
I think it's a really interesting point looking at the full revenue bow tie. It makes a lot of sense for the CRO role. Moving on to the last topic, managing churn in a proactively way, pricing model reform. Churn is a headache for all sales leaders. We all say at times, it's never been so easy to turn technology off. So when you're talking about managing in a proactive way, how are you looking at churn? And then we'll go into pricing models and things like that.
Yeah. I tranche it up. Split it into the business I'm in now into three. We have the top tier. They get the full white glove treatment. They get a dedicated CSM. They will get an account manager as well. And they will also get route into the product team via the account manager and the CSM, not directly. And they get quarterly QBRs, and they have proper access to our roadmap, and they tend to be they're big customers, not just big customers from an ARR point of view. They're all really quite big companies, so they are normally multi-regional. Most of them are in manufacturing and healthcare, the ICP that we talked about. So they're quite slow-moving businesses. So you have to be well ahead of the curve. You have to be, months and months and months ahead of the renewal dates. Most of them we do try and move on to multi-year contracts, but they don't always want to do that. So that's quite a traditional way of doing it. And then we've got the mid-tier, which is not so. We've got lots of them. So that first tier is like hundreds, a few hundred, which is great. It's almost like its own business. And then the middle tier is thousands, so a few thousand. But they're still quite big companies. They're just may only users in a small use case. So we manage them in a different way with more data-led approach. We still have teams on them, renewals executives and renewals admins. That's very much in the partner ecosystem as well. A lot of those customers will come through the partner network. So we use the usage data that we know they're using of the product, and we then proactively communicate with them and point out things that they might want to do more to get them more engaged and use the software a bit more to make sure they're a little bit more sticky. And then again, leading into that renewal, you've got to gently don't do the whole insurance policy thing, which is you get an email 14 days before your renewal and saying, do you want to renew it? It's 200 quid. Everyone goes on to write me, sorry, they compare the market and gets a cheaper price. You can't do that. You've got to lead in over a period of time and start those communications. And then the third lowest tier, we have tens of thousands, and that is purely modelled. It's a portal-led approach using product usage data, support data, and outbound comms from the marketing department to nurture them through using the software for the whole 12 months. Again, don't just start doing it 30 days before renewal. It's a high-risk situation in the first quarter. Someone buys your software if they're not using it. So keep an eye out for that, because ultimately, if they're not using it, you're gonna have a problem. So it's making sure you're managing it in the right way, because you haven't got an unlimited resource of people. If I had the perfect world, I'd have someone managing all of our 55,000 customers, but I can't do that. It's impossible. So we have to do it in a way that is as streamlined, and the interaction between again, it's vital. The Rev-n-u team and the support organisation is really, really key.
Looking at Trance One, you mentioned there that they all have an account manager and a CSM. In your view, what's the difference between CSM and the account manager?
The CSM is I'm not saying the account manager's not, but the CSM is the trusted partner. They partner with the business. They put that customer first. They are there to make sure that the customer doesn't have any issues, that is using the product in the right way, that has access to the product roadmap, that is being informed on what's coming and what's important, getting two-way feedback from the customer to make sure that the customer is, feeling they've got skin in the game. I think there's a feature they want in before 2026, they've got a chance of getting it. And the type of person that does that sort of job is way more sort of nurturing, and a real trusted confidant within the customer. And the account manager is there to be a little bit more punchy on the negotiations when it gets to commercial side of a renewal. And often that's a different type of person. And our account managers don't always only just align to our CSM accounts. They do have other accounts, growth accounts that they go after that haven't got a CSM yet. But they're like a team. They work really, really well together. There's not many of them in the business, but they just gel really well. Customer likes working with them in that way, and they don't always want to talk to a salesperson, and that's fine. It's not a problem.
And in your opinion, do you remunerate the CSM on a commission basis based on renewals?
In my opinion, or what do I do?
In your opinion, what would be best?
You target them on GRR. So you're targeting them on retaining the customer. The majority of it's on GRR. And they would, in my opinion, they should get a little bit extra for growth. But the growth and then the salespeople are all on growth. So it's important for me that they renew those customers, because those customers are tens of, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And to have a dent of that size in GRR is hard work to get it back. So they think about the renewal. Their prize is keeping the customer.
I imagine that they're the ones that you definitely want to keep, because it's not easy to bring in another client like that. Going down to the third tier, does technology become important to help you understand? The one things I massively learn over the years when you're looking at ICP and everything else you're looking about growth is people using the product and the platform. If they're not using it, then it's a clear indication they're going to move away. The cheaper something is, the easier it is to ignore something for a bit and then just switch it off. So people are looking at having less people in a business. Are you looking at technology to help you understand what's going on in that bottom tranche?
Yeah. So what we've done in the bottom tranche is, historically, we didn't used to offer much support to our tier 3. But we have, with the help of AI and some technology, we have opened up support to every single customer, which has improved considerably our GRR. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, there is technology out there on the market that does look at trends. It takes your product usage data, your support ticket data, any interaction they have with you, and it produces information and intent that we can then produce outbound communication to these customers. But yeah, in the long tail, you have to get involved with the right technology out there in the market to keep those customers hooked into the usage. And it is all about usage. The people that will buy it for it might be so low a ticket price, they bought it just to fix one problem for one time. You can't change that. You can't change somebody. I have to have this remote access software to dial into that thing for 2 weeks, and then they'll just turn it off. But as long as you keep the product improving and you know what they're doing with the product, that's key.
So you mentioned there that you're using it to now support these customers more. How are you supporting them more? Is it like a AI chat box which is answering questions for them? How are you getting this insight to them?
Yeah, it's AI, both telephone, chat and email AI in the first instance, on first line support, or renewals inquiry. What happens is basically a triage service that then triages it to, a lot of the time they'll fix the problem and it gets resolved, therefore happy customer. And if it doesn't get resolved and not happy customer, it gets routed very quickly through to a person within our organisation.
Amazing. And what made you want to go down that route?
I'll be honest, when I came to this business, and I'd never been a CRO of a business that had this B2C or B2 Soho business, small home office, they're the majority of those long tail customers. It was really upsetting me as a CRO that I could tell from some of the feedback we were getting was that the customers were not happy. So about a year and a half ago, we did something about it. And that's what we did. We built this, virtual customer support, customer service, stroke triage part of the business that really helps. It's an extension of our own company. It's great.
And I guess it frees up people's time to focus elsewhere where it's needed. So it all sounds great. Where, for people listening to this, where do they even start for that to even know that the technology is out there? Look, you've taken part in AI roundtables that I've been having. I've had 3 of them now, and the levels of companies that are onboarding and embracing AI there's a gulf of difference between some people that are doing brilliantly. You guys are doing some great stuff on churn or basically customer support, and some of the other leaders are, but a lot are sort of like sat there not sure. So do you have an eye on technology? Did you know that technology could fix this, or you just asked the right questions?
Yeah, it goes back to my revenue leadership team. I have a very strong revenue leadership team that I do keep an eye on it, but they also keep a close eye on it. When I had the problem, it's not just my problem, it's our problem. We talked about it, I think it was December 24, was when it really hit the point. Other things were sorted. I'd been in the business 18 months, and I was like, we have to fix this. So as a team, there was 4 or 5 of us, five of us in revenue leadership. We looked into it, went out to the market, we talked to our agency partners, we talked to just lots of different people, and 3 or 4 things bubbled up. Then when you start talking around your network, we've spoken to them. And then we chose one of them, and we chose one that was a combination of, they have people and the AI technology, and that suited us. It might not suit others because we wanted an extension of our own team. And they've been running now for about a year with amazing results. Like our backlog of support tickets has gone down to virtually 0, which is fantastic.
So to explain to some of the leaders now, I imagine, I don't imagine, I know, because obviously I talk to sales leaders every day, their main focus would be new logos and Trance 1, because they'll feel that we can replace Trance 3 with new logos. What difference has it made to the business being able to sort out that, try and have the success that you've been having without putting any more manpower onto it? How does that affect growth and renewal?
So the biggest thing that happened in 2025, without going into too much detail on the actual numbers, expansion be a part of our business in that longer tail part of the business was almost equal to our net new revenue. So, and the year before it was not anywhere near it. So just improving that experience and allowing the customers to route through and talk to us, talk to our junior account managers and our renewals executives, and just increase that volume of conversation has, one, improved our CSAT at the same time as improving our ARR in that cohort. So you get double whammy, the customer's happier, but actually spending a little bit more money. And actually on the way through of that, of doing that project, which was ongoing forever, that project, that's never going to go away, we actually reduced the number of customers. Because actually a lot of customers didn't need our software, a lot of the very small ones, and that's fine. And therefore we've shored up the quality of the revenue. So the quality of the customers that are relevant to what we do is better. So therefore in 2026, hopefully start seeing soon, the GRR will start moving up because the quality of the customers that we renewed last year is better. So it's just about moving the dial in different ways in different parts of the business.
How important is removing the clients that it's not right for off the platform? Because I'm guessing, and it is guessing, the data that comes in from the customers that it's right for, when you are using AI, you need the right data to be able to maximize giving the right information out. So you have to remove the clients that shouldn't be on the platform, regardless if they're going to renew or not.
Bottom line is, if you see a client that's bought the software, used it for, as I said, used it for a month, and they've connected to some servers and they've used it for a month, and then they haven't used it for 6 months, they haven't interacted with the support department, they haven't done anything. I mean, your website, haven't done anything. They haven't looked at anything. They're going to churn. They are just going to churn. So you don't really want to try and force them to stay, because they're not, for whatever reason, 2 or 3 years before, even the year before, whatever, they were being given the wrong message why they bought it in the first place. So it's all linked, right? So at the top end now, the messages are all loud and clear: high security, what verticals, what our sweet spot is. Therefore, the customers coming in now shouldn't be the ones that use it for 2 weeks and then do it again.
I really appreciate you taking time out, Stuart. You've had some tremendous successes, and I've loved every interaction that we've had and the knowledge that you've been sharing, both at the round tables and for joining me here today on the podcast. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, James. See you very soon.